Welcome creatives, and thanks for tuning in. We're pretty excited about this workshop that we're going to be offering for free. It's built around a custom tool that we have designed to be able to bring you these 3D magic psychedelic mushrooms. And so we're kind of working out of, or on the fringe anyway, of macrame traditions. This is nothing like your grandmother's macrame, and we're trying to sort of modernize knotting techniques so that we can bring you groovy and colorful designs like these. So this workshop is appropriate for beginners, intermediate, and expert knotters alike. If you've never made a knot before, I think this would even be okay for you. And we'll be covering quite a few different lessons. We'll cover how to knot the pattern that creates this sort of semi-3D mushroom shape on our custom unfettered frame. We'll cover how to create these gills that that bring us all the way into the stem. We'll cover how to create this little veil with a fringing technique. We'll also cover how to paint in your own custom colorways the toadstool part of the mushrooms, and we'll even walk you through briefly how to embellish your toadstool with embroidered beads for giving them that kind of effect and depth and realism. The thing that we love about this design is the kind of 3D pops that it allows for. So that differentiation between the toadstool and the gills, where you can create the toadstool in color and have the gills that are completely differentiated and offset with a natural colored cord, is just a really beautiful effect. The other thing that's so lovely about these is that you can just attach them as a standalone wall hanging to a finishing nail on a wall and hang them as is. You can group them together for a fun gallery wall effect that works especially well with differently sized toadstools. You can also stand them up. They're fairly robust, so you can stand them upright and they can lean against a window. They can be in a windowsill, on a bookshelf. They're beautiful in a little corner shelf, just basically anywhere where you want to bring those groovy vibes and accents into your home. These are absolutely perfect. So let's begin. We'll talk about what you're going to need to complete this project. Let's talk about how to make this wonderful project. So first and foremost, you'll need these signature frames from our online store, so Unfettered Art and Supply. You'll find us on Etsy at the moment via Unfettered Co. So we have developed these signature frames in order to offer you something that will allow you to create a somewhat 3D mushroom. What makes the shape so perfect is this 3D bar, this rounded bar that comes along the front. That's what allows for this wonderful differentiation between the colorful toadstool part and the natural gills part of the mushroom, which ends up giving it that three-dimensionality. We have these frames available in 3 different sizes. This middle mushroom here is created with our medium-size frame. This small mushroom here is created with our small frame. And then I don't have an example of the larger mushroom with me because it won't fit on the screen, but this is the larger of the 3 size frame. One point I want to mention about these is that what makes them function for this project is not just the 3D element in the bar that comes across the front. It's also the fact that they are powder coated with a polished professional finish. So you are going to moisten the top of your mushrooms. You're going to wet the cotton eventually when it comes to creating the color on the toadstool. And if you do that on a steel frame that hasn't been coated, it will rust through the cotton and ruin your mushroom. So you do need to have a powder coated steel frame for this, and that's why we have this available in our shop. So in addition to the metal frame, which is the most crucial piece, you're also going to need a few other things. I'm working with 3mm single strand recycled natural cotton. I highly recommend this cotton from our shop for this project, not just because I'm trying to sell you on it, but also because it takes dyes incredibly beautifully. The dyes just saturate with this cotton better than with any other cotton I've worked with, and so I can't guarantee that you'll have as vibrant, kind of poignant toadstools with another type of cotton as you will get with the cotton available in our shop. You'll need about, for a medium-sized mushroom, you'll need about 200 feet of 3mm single strand. In addition to that, you'll need a sharp pair of scissors. I work with Ginger. I find it to be a great brand. You'll need either a fringe brush or a comb of some sort. We have both a beautiful bamboo fringe brush and this lovely metal comb available in our online shop. Additionally, you'll need just a regular old paintbrush. You can find these at any dollar store, or you probably have some hanging around, especially if you have kids. Some white thread, some white beads for the embroidery embellishes. You could use wooden beads for this. You could use really anything for those beaded elements, but that's your choice. And a needle that you can fit the hole of the bead through, of course. Finally, you're going to need some textile dyes. So 2 brands that I work with for my own projects and that I've worked with for these toadstools are Rit and Procyon. So both are, Procyon tends to be available in stores that are for art supplies, so painting supplies, sketching supplies, they tend to carry this. Whereas Rit you can find at any kind of large scale corporate crafting store whose names I won't mention here. Rit comes in 2 forms. It comes in a powder form and also in this liquid form in bottles. I'll be working with a mix of both the liquid form of Rit and the powdered form of Procyon because I think it only comes as a powder. So we'll talk about the colors a little bit later when we get to that portion of the workshop, but this is what you'll need. So get your supplies together and let's get going. All right, let's begin. So the first stage of this project is a bit of a tedious one. It's a controversial one. It's one that I'm not going to show myself doing on camera because I will revert into a lot of swear words. What we're going to do is we're wrapping every part of this, the outline of the hoop, the frame that you see. So we do that so that the frame metal isn't showing through and it creates a more continuous design. Weavers wrap metal in order to be able to warp what they've wrapped, and for macrameers, what the wrapping does is that it allows for friction so that you can safely anchor your ropes against the metal and they won't slip or slide around. So you will need at least a 35-foot piece of rope. Leave 12 to 15 feet off on this side, a tail of it. We're gonna all start here with the long end. You're gonna follow my finger in your wrapping. So just wrap, 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 wrap all the way around here. Keep wrapping until you get to this corner here. Once you're there, you're gonna wrap across the middle bar. You're gonna cover this corner. Make sure your corners are nicely covered because they will show through. And then this portion of the mushroom here is gonna be double wrapped, but that's okay because it'll be hidden in the gills. And then you're going to keep wrapping until you get to this corner here where you'll tie a knot. With that 12 to 15 foot length that you left out, you're going to wrap all the way along here, wrap up here until you get to here. If you have enough cord left, you can come back down and create a double layer there like you did on this side. If not, you can attach it, you can tie it here, and it will be hidden in the gills of your mushroom. So I'm just going to show you a frame where I've done that. So as you can see, I've got one knot here. This is an ugly end, and that's okay because it's going to be ultimately gathered into the stem of my mushroom and it'll be invisible. And so this side, I'm just gonna tight. So with your wrapping, you want to make sure that all of the metal is covered, especially in the corners like this, and fairly tight. So if you push or pull with your thumb and forefinger, it shouldn't budge a whole lot. It shouldn't slip and slide. It should be fairly fixed in one place. So you wrap fairly tightly. To tie a knot, you're gonna just do a double clove hitch, and that will secure your cord in place. So that's one. And two. When you're wrapping, again, you want to make sure that you're strategically positioning, like starting and ending at points where it's going to be hidden in the actual design, because you don't want this hanging around, and you don't want to cut it here because it'll unravel. So this is going to be hidden because it'll become part of the gills of the mushroom. All right, wrap job complete. Okay, so now that your frame is wrapped, it's time to start filling in with square knots and reverse square knots. alternating rows of square knots is what we're using, the toadstool portion of the mushroom. So this top part of the frame is our anchor point. So all of our cords that we're using are going to be attached to that point. So with the help of reverse lark's head knots, attach two cords to begin. Your lengths for this should be about 5 to 6 feet, and then you're just folding each in half. So I'm snugging up my first piece of rope to the right hand side of the point of the mushroom, and my second piece of rope to the left hand side of the point of the mushroom. I'm making sure it's nice and tight, and then I'm going to create my first square knot. This is a little wobbly, and I'll pin it in place in just 1 second once my knot is in place. So this is a super easy project to do in your lap. You don't even need a macrame rack for it, but I'm using my colleague's wonderful foam macrame pin board. I find it helpful to reduce sound for these videos, and also just to be able to hold the frame in place. So instead of lining up all of your ropes and then doing alternating rows of square knots, I think it's better for this project to just line up your ropes once at a time and knot as you line. So I'm not going to tell you the exact number of ropes you'll need for this. You're just going to have to feel it out a little bit. So once I've created my first square knot at the very tip, I'm going to use the two right hand portions of that square knot to be part of the next square knot that's going to bring in the rope that I just added on the right hand side. That probably sounds more complicated than it actually is. But you're just going to repeat this step over and over again. So with each rope that you add, make sure that you knot it in immediately. And then whatever you do to one side, do the exact same thing to the other side. Okay, so time for my next row. So I'm going to attach one piece of cord with a reverse lark's head on the left and one on the right. Make sure that your knots are all nice and tense. It doesn't so much matter which side you start from, whether your row, you knot it from right to left or left to right, just so long as each of the ropes that you've now attached to your mushroom frame, is part of the row. So each one is knotted in a square knot. Okay, we're going to do this one last row together, and then I think you probably get the idea, and we'll meet at the end of having filled up the full toadstool with these alternating rows of square knots. Okay, so you're going to keep doing that step. So if for my next, my board is traveling a little bit here. So I'm adding my next rope is going to be added to this side, and then I'm going to add one to this side, and then I'll knot a full row. So keep going back and forth until you're all the way down, till you meet at this middle crossbar, and then we'll talk about what to do from there. Okay, so now that the full toadstool has been alternating row of square knotted in, and you kind of finish it just to the point where it sits kind of naturally above that middle bar, it's time for the next step. So your cords will probably be hanging in front of that middle bar. So what you got to do is just gather them all and tuck them in behind it. So get in there. Okay, so we kind of want them to be sitting just like that, so behind the middle bar but in front of the rest of the mushroom frame. And what we're going to do is create a row of clove hitch knots that will make this a nice smooth line across the front of your mushroom. So you want to get each knot in there, each cord into your clove hitch row. Probably though, you're only going to be able to fit single clove hitches instead of doubles. So just go one by one. So you're wrapping it around the bar in front and then through itself and then tightening it. I find that occasionally what I'll do just to make sure that the row remains secure is I'll do one, like maybe every 10th rope that I'm single clove hitching, I'll double clove hitch one, and that will just kind of lock it into place. We will be pulling it tight around the stem anyway, but we do kind of want to make sure to create a solid line that doesn't loosen over time, especially because we're going to be dyeing it. So yeah, let's say with this one I'll create a double clove hitch instead, and then I'll carry on with my single clove hitches. So there's my double. If you find that it becomes too crowded, the other thing that you can kind of get away with is leaving just a few of them out. That's not going to be super obvious, and it'll still create the solid line. So you're just going all the way across the bar by coming from behind it first, wrapping around it, and then pulling your cord through that hole you've created. Make sure that there's no space between each of your single clove hitches and that you're pulling them tight as you go along. Okay, so keep going until you're all the way across and you've gone right into that very corner as far as you can, and then we'll convene at the end. Okay, so I've made my line all the way across the front bar there with either single or double clove hitch knots, and I've tried to get as snug up into the corners as I possibly can. And so at this point you can kind of play with your mushroom. She said play with your mushroom. Okay, but you can play with it a little bit so that it sort of has that kind of 3D effect in the toadstool part. And then from here you are going to sometimes you just have to fiddle a little bit with your mushroom. I'm saying it again. Make sure that so these are going to create your gills. Make sure that they are nice and you've gathered them into a fist, nice and flat. And then from there, you're gonna, with your thumb and forefinger, you're gathering them into a fist kind of at the base of where your toadstool, the section of the frame where the toadstool head meets the shaft or the stem. Woo, it's getting spicy in here. And then it's time for a gathering knot. So with about a 12-foot length cord, you're gonna create a gathering knot that will allow you to wrap about 8 times around the top of the mushroom stem tightly. So that means this is the piece of rope that you're gonna pull to tighten it. So you go around, and you try and get as high up as you possibly can. 2, 8. So I'm going to go like 9 times. The other thing I'm trying to do is make sure that my stem is nicely lined up, so my wraps are as neat as they possibly can be. So to finish your gathering knot, the end of that string, loop it through the hole, the loop that you've created, and then pull it up through the gathering of cords that you've just put in place. And then you can cut off the end and then cut off the other end so that they become invisible. So from here, we just have 2 more steps left. Well, a few more to paint it, but to create the mushroom itself. So every second string or so, just leave those out of what will become the gathering knot that creates the bottom stem of your mushroom. So we're leaving these out so that we can fringe them to create the veil of the mushroom. If you don't want the veil effect, then you can just skip this step and just keep going down the length of the stem with your gathering knot. So for this piece of rope, I've used a fairly lengthy one because I want to be able to create a more bulbous bottom, because I find that this type of mushroom often has that. So leaving every second or maybe every third string out of the mix, I am going to create another gathering knot that's gonna come, all the way, it's getting stuck to the end of, the very tip rather, of the mushroom frame. So, okay, so I'm making that loop, and then I'm gonna try and snug the start of the gathering knot up to the base of those, the previous one that I just made and tied. So you've got 2 gathering knots basically to create the stem of your mushroom. I'm gonna move this out of the way. There we go. So I'm not too sure how many wraps you'll need here. But as many as it takes, and make sure that they're nice and tight and close together. So for this section, you probably want around a 20-foot length and some space. So you can see my frame ends here. I'm gonna go as close to the tip of it as I can with my gathering knot. Oh, whoops, that's my loop there. Sometimes, okay, there's my loop. The other thing that I'm gonna do is kind of layer my wraps around the bottom to, so I'm going back up the stem of the mushroom again, just to create more bulk for that sort of bulbous bottom effect that I want. There. So if there's one place to do this like with nice, really tight tension, it's the base, because you want for this wrap knot to hold in place really securely. Okay, so that's probably the end there. Just do a few more layers. Okay, so then I just find my loop. I haven't lost it. So same thing as last time, I'm just threading the rope I've been wrapping with through the loop I created to begin the knot, and then pulling it until this cord completely disappears, or at least the loop disappears. I'm actually going to leave that in the mushroom because it will add to the veil, and then you can just snip the bottom, because when you pick or forage mushrooms, they kind of have that fibrous base. And then, okay, so this is what I'm left with. The cords that are creating the effect of the veil, I'm just going to chop those shorter, probably about an inch or so. You can, start long and work to shorter because you can't go in the opposite way. This is where you'll need your brush or comb, and you're just gonna brush those short little veil fibers that you created so that they're kind of, just to give them that sort of fringe effect. And then you can really see sort of how they're gonna look and cut them or style them accordingly. Okay, so there's the finished mushroom. From here, we're gonna work on dyeing the toadstool. So I'm kind of happy with the shape of that. Yeah, so we'll meet again to talk about the steps that we're gonna take to get that toadstool top in a nice range of colors. Okay, so this is the funnest part of this project. I highly recommend dyeing a test strip before you actually dye onto your toadstool, because if you don't like the colors, then you can't really go back. You can dye over top, but you can't really take the dye away. So yeah, do a test strip. This is the fun part. It's where you get to really experiment and play. It kind of feels like using a coloring book or coloring in a coloring book. I'm gonna try Rit Scarlet and Rit Coral mixed with Rit Sapphire Blue. So because these are liquids, I've added about a tablespoon of dye, concentrated dye, to about a tablespoon of water. If you want to dull your colors, like let's say I want my coral to be quite a bit lighter than scarlet, so my scarlet has less water added to it than my coral mixture does. You can really play around here. It's completely up to you. It's completely fun and it's completely creative. The step you'll need to do before you start in on dyeing is grab your paintbrush, and on top of that, run the mushroom top in running hot water. So you want this top part of the cap to be moist so that the dye easily applies to it. To the best of your abilities, try to keep the gills not moistened with water, because you don't want for the paint or the dye to bleed into the gills. We can talk about what to do if that does happen as a correction, but you kind of want to prevent it from happening. So I'm going to try and make the top of my cap scarlet, the middle of my cap coral, and the base of my cap a sapphire blue. If you're worried about getting dye on your hands in this step, then I would highly recommend wearing gloves. Dyes are quite toxic, so they're not really the sort of thing that you want to get on you. The other thing, of course, is make sure to cover your surface with parchment paper or just a cloth or something that won't ruin the surface, because if the dye gets stuck on the surface, then that's kind of that. So I'm just painting it like I would a canvas. It's a fiber canvas. It's not like a typical painter's canvas, but you can kind of see the idea. You're just trying to be careful not to get drips and drops anywhere else on the mushroom than where you're painting. The wetter the top of the mushroom is, the more ground your dye is going to cover, so the more it spreads. You can just kind of get along the edges. You don't have to paint onto the back of the mushroom, because that's most likely going to be invisible anyway, but that's up to you. So yeah, you just kind of dab it on as you go along. This makes me feel like a child. I love it. Sometimes it can be tricky to get in, like all the way into the knots, because yeah, you sometimes have to do a couple of layers with one color to kind of get it right in there. And then the other thing to keep in mind with dyeing is that it's always going to dry lighter than the dye you've applied. So if you're thinking, oh my gosh, it looks too dark, I'm not too sure, then just wait until at least 24 hours to see the true colors emerge, because they will always be more muted. They look saturated when they're first going on, but I guarantee you they'll always be more muted. I personally like to try and get the darkest color on the tip of my mushroom, and that's just simply because that's where I also want to put my white beads, and so I find that they're really nicely offset by a darker shade along the top. Okay, so I'm thinking at this point I'm going to start sequencing into the brighter and lighter coral shade, and I have not done as I said I should, so do as I say, not as I do. I've not tested a strip of rope to see how this is going to go, so let's just collectively just cross your fingers for me, okay? And we'll dive right in. Okay, I think it's all right. I wanted that kind of ombre effect, and I think it's there. So yeah, I think once this dyes, like it might look similar right now, but once it dyes, I think it's going to give a really nice clear differentiation. So you can mix colors, right? Like let's say you wanted to mix your ruby or red color with your coral to create like a sort of gradient effect along the mushroom cap. You can do that. You can just be super playful and inspired by painting. Or maybe you want to mix the coral with the sapphire to create a different shade altogether. You could do that too. You might like be okay with a bigger paintbrush than what I have, but this was just what the dollar store had available, and so it's what I'm using. This is something I think that kids would really enjoy doing. You don't have to have like a simply colored mushroom top. You could paint a full landscape into it, or you could do a rainbow, or you could do just an interesting and intricate design. You could do something geometric, who knows. I really hope that you make these though, and that you tag me so that I can see your creations, because that would bring me tremendous joy. Okay, so I'm gonna fast forward a little bit so that we can talk about the finishing, and because I'm nervous about what's gonna happen when I put the sapphire on. But stay tuned and you will see. Okay, so I'm nearing completion and I'm super happy with the way that this is turning out. Final point that I want to make with you, and that's along this ridge, you want a nice solid line so that when it's facing like forward, you see that as a clear line of delineation between the toadstool top and the gills. So you come up underneath and you're just like, you don't need to go right to the gills, kind of stay away from them a little bit, because dye does have a tendency to bleed. And so the closer you get to them, the more likely it is that 24 hours later, you'll find that you'll return to your mushroom and it's bled into the gills. Now, if that does happen, what you can do is you can just put a little tiny bit of bleach mixed with water on the edge of, like on your paintbrush. And you can like usually get those spots out, but it's better obviously to not have them on there to begin with. So you can kind of see just how far along I've come. It looks pretty perfect and uniform from the front, and that's exactly what I want. So the most careful place of painting the mushroom is going to be along this top, along this front line. So again, I'll remind you that it's going to lighten as it dries, and it will kind of shift form a little bit. So now that you've mixed your dyes, instead of wasting them, it's a really good idea. Okay, so two key things I think that might have gotten cut off in the last section is just err on the side of caution along this front line so that you're not coming quite to the gills, because you don't want the dye to bleed. The other recommendation is that you leave your dye containers available just in case you need to do touch-ups. Once it dries, it'll become, it just changes shade slightly, and you might want to make some adjustments at that point. Lay it flat to dry for 24 to 48 hours. It shouldn't take much longer than that. And then once it's fully dry, you can start just with a needle and thread. You thread your needle, obviously, tie a nice chunky knot on the end of your thread, and then you're just weaving in it or embroidering in and out, so that you're attaching beads to the front of the mushroom. You can even do 2 or 3 at once, and it's just going to give you that really nice, it's just going to bring the mushroom to life and kind of add to the 3D effects and 3D embellishments. So I hope you've had a blast making these. I hope that you become just as addicted to them as I have. I hope that they bring all of those perfect retro groovy vibes to your space. These make beautiful presents, so maybe there are people in your life that you think need a little bit of extra vibrancy. Have fun, be creative, be playful, be experimental, and remember to give yourself a big fat hug for trying something new out. Thanks for tuning in. Let us know if you have any questions at all. And as always, it's a pleasure to have the privilege of your company.